Here are the answers to Unit 6 free response question number 1. Retake this quiz by pausing the video before the answers are shown. So the situation is a survey collected information on television viewing habits. 37% indicated their favorite sport to watch on television was American football, and you were asked to first construct and interpret a 95% confidence interval. For the proportion of all people in the United States, indicate that favorite sport was football. So while constructing the confidence interval isn't a huge challenge, the conditions needed to be stated as part of your answer. If you didn't do that, at most you had partially correct because 2 of the conditions were part of the 3 steps for an essentially correct answer. So there were 3 conditions that were lumped into 2 categories. The first was asking whether or not the sample was collected randomly, and you were told that it was. The second was checking that the sample size was large enough to produce a normal sampling distribution, which for proportions is n times p and n times 1 minus p, both being greater than 10, which are satisfied. And then the last is to make sure that your sample isn't more than 10% of the population so that you can use non-replacement, and it's a pretty safe bet that that's an acceptable assumption. Those 3 assumptions were put into 2/3 of the essentially correct answer, the other one being correctly identifying the interval either by name or by formula. The overall Part A was scored in 3 steps. Just the conditions and the name of the interval was step 1 of 3 for Part A. The second step of Part A was actually creating the interval. You should always do formula substitution answer. The key didn't show the formula, but it's going to be p hat plus or minus z star square root p 1 minus p over n. And creating the interval produces this, essentially correct if you have the correct interval with work. The third step of Part A was interpreting your interval, and that's the standard sentence that you should have memorized. 95% confident that the proportion of all people in the United States who would indicate American football as their favorite sport is between 0.34 and 0.40. Essentially correct means you needed to interpret the interval and make sure that you were trying to capture the population number, the population proportion. They specifically looked for people that said that they were trying to estimate the population number. And then you had to state a confidence level, which for this one is 95%. So Part B asks, is it reasonable to believe that 33% of the actual people in the United States whose favorite sport to watch on television was American football? Justify your answer. Full credit was given for Part B as long as you stated that no, it is not reasonable because 33% is not inside the interval. The only way you can get this wrong is if you said no, 33% is too far away from the sample proportion of 37%. You had to specifically reference the interval that you calculated in order to answer question B correctly. So here's the scoring. Part A had 3 parts, step 1, step 2, step 3, each worth a point, and then Part B was also worth a point for a total of 4 points. Everything essentially correct is a full point, anything partially correct is a half point, and incorrect was 0 points. Total those up out of 4. They do not give half points, so you would round up or truncate down based on how much work and what they call holistic grading. If it looked like you knew what you were doing, they would round up.